Week 13 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few quarterbacks I have as sleeper options this week. The first guy, Jake Browning of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Jake Browning, last week I had him in the list as a sleeper option, and it wasn't a totally horrible game, but it was just a mediocre game at best. 227 pass yards versus the Steelers, a touchdown, an interception, and 9 rush yards. So this week, on paper, a decent matchup at the Jaguars. Give up the third most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. And they still have good weapons over here, obviously, as a Cincinnati Bengal team. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, if he plays in this game, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon out of the backfield. And Browning, he didn't look like a total non-factor, where at least he went out there, he moved the football a little bit. It was definitely versus a tough defense, but this week versus a defense that's more vulnerable against the pass and giving up a lot of passing yards and points to fantasy quarterbacks, even though this Jaguar team's amongst the league leaders, obviously, in creating turnovers. I think Browning in deep leagues, if you need a quarterback and a sleeper option, could surprise some owners this week. The next sleeper, Minshew of the Indianapolis Colts. So Gardner Minshew, he's been on the list a few times this season as a sleeper option, but still, he's not getting much ads out there on fantasy rosters as Gardner Minshew. Still out there in 80% of fantasy leagues on the last few weeks for Minshew. I know the games haven't been great, but this week a decent matchup with the Tennessee Titans. They give up the 18th most fantasy points quarterbacks on the season. So the last few games for Minshew, Week 9 at Carolina, 127 pass yards, 5 rush yards. Week 10 in New England, in Germany, 194 pass yards and INT in that game. And then last week, Week 12 versus Tampa Bay, 251 pass yards, an interception, 6 rushing yards with a rushing touchdown. So this week, Tennessee's a team he's obviously familiar with, playing with the Jacksonville Jaguars for a few seasons a few years ago. And even early in the season, coming in for relief of Anthony Richardson. He had 155 pass yards in that game. So Minshew's got solid weapons. Michael Pittman, you got Josh Downs, Zach Moss now taking over for Taylor, even though he's been solid when he played a lot, was Zach Moss. So right now, with all those factors in a pretty decent match for the Titan team, that's one of the worst teams in terms of giving up points to wide receivers and quarterbacks. I think Gardner Minshew could go out there and have a decent performance. And the third and final quarterback I have as a sleeper, staying in the same game, Will Levis of the Tennessee Titans. Will Levis, Week 8 was his first start of his career, and it was a great outing, 238 pass yards and 4 touchdowns. But ever since then, he's only reached double-digit fantasy points once in the last 4 games as Will Levis. But right now, we know this Tennessee Titan team really isn't going anywhere this season, and they're going to want to see what the kid has. So Will Levis has great arm strength, no doubt about it. He's definitely got some pocket awareness, and he's a tough kid back there, taking a lot of big hits and hanging into the last few weeks. Week 10 at Tampa Bay, 199 pass yards and interception. Week 11 at the Jaguars, 158 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, a fumble loss. And Week 12 versus Carolina, only 185 pass yards, where it was the Derrick Henry game in that one where he ran in for 2 touchdowns. So right now, Will Levis, big arm, no doubt about it, but really not a quarterback who has many weapons in the passing games. Besides DeAndre Hopkins, even though it's been a down year, Chigga Kwangwa really hasn't done much, and Traylon Burks can't get on the field. So right now, he's available in 75% of fantasy leagues here as Levis, and it's a decent matchup if you're in a pinch at quarterback versus the Colts. They give up the 15th most fantasy points, so that's a few quarterbacks I have as sleepers here for Week 13 of the fantasy football season.